Hello and welcome to the first Your Questions Digital DJ Tips podcast of 2025 from the Digital DJ Tips DJ School. This whole podcast is funded by our amazing students and was recorded in front of an audience of our students who will be chipping in and helping me as we answer the questions that our students have asked us this week. So we've got questions on the best laptop for DJing, how to read a crowd when they're not dancing, how to discover a new genre without going out and buying all the music, and several other interesting topics raised by our audience this week. As ever, it's been fun answering them, so let's get stuck straight in. Our first question today, we've actually got some quite varied questions today. We've got technical questions, got questions about charity gigging. I've got a question about record pools and how you can use them for music discovery, and lots of others that have come in the meantime as well. So I'm going to get through as many as I can, but a real varied bag, which is always good to hear from our students. So number one is from Julius, and this is a pure technical question. This comes in quite regularly, and our advice on this has actually changed recently, so it's a good time to update it. And Julius's question was really simple. Julius says, I'm having some issues with flakiness with my laptop. The screen is getting a little bit jumpy and the audio is a little bit distorted. What can I do about it? What spec do I need for a laptop to stop this kind of thing happening? As I say, a very common question, and it's one that we can answer in a slightly different way due to the way that DJ software has changed. And that's the point here. DJ software has changed recently, and it's gone from actually not being very processor intensive to being a little bit more so, and especially if you're starting to use all the features which have been coming into DJ software and making it so exciting in the last couple of years. So here's the thing, Julius. When you are using specifically real-time stems, which if you're a new DJ listening to this, is when you have the buttons on your DJ gear that let you isolate or remove the vocals and the music and the bass line and the drums from your tracks while you're actually playing them. So you can have an a cappella instantly, or you can have an instrumental instantly if you've suddenly got vocals clashing in a mix or something. It's really, really good. It's great technology. And it's now in all the software. Funnily enough, just before going live to come and meet you guys and record this, I was filming our 2025 version of which DJ platform has the best sounding stems, because we do this every year because they change so quickly. And so I've just come away from doing Tractor, Recordbox and Serato. I've got DJ Pro, Virtual DJ and Engine DJ to come because they've just added it as well. So halfway through filming that. So I'm right up on this at the moment. Stems is great, Stems is good fun, but it does take an unimaginable amount of grunt, really, of processor power. And so that's the thing, that's the big thing that's changed the advice we're giving here for specs for a DJ laptop. Now, if you don't want to use anything other than basic DJing, let's say you're coming to this hobby as someone who's DJed on record decks or with vinyl, and all you want to do is what you used to do on record decks and vinyl. Well, the good news is pretty much any reasonably modern laptop can work for that because you're not using the features which are going to cause you issues. But I'm going to wager that as soon as you discover these things, you're going to want to use them. So you are going to need something that's reasonably well spec'd. So let's get this answer into two parts. The first part is the technical specifications. So you're going to need a fast, modern processor. If you go onto the websites for all the major platforms, they will tell you the minimum and the recommended specifications. So always go and check there. Now, we have always taught on and we always use Mac computers. And for the Macs, you're going to want the M processors, the modern processors. The older Intel processors are not going to cut it. I'm not qualified to tell you about Windows computers, which processors are the best and which aren't. I can almost guarantee that in our live chat, because we are recording this live, someone will help me out on that before we're through and I will pass that on to you. But certainly if you're using a Mac, it's M processors, and the bigger the number after the M, frankly, the better. Now, when it comes to the drive that you're using, the hard drive, this isn't quite so important as far as that part of how your laptop works goes. But nonetheless, having a SSD drive, which is a solid state drive that doesn't have any moving parts, just like the hard drive if you like, in your phone, is really advisable nowadays. It's more reliable and the access times are much, much quicker. It's almost like just having memory. And that's going to help your DJ software to just run more smoothly as well. The trade-off is that SSD drives cost an awful lot more for the same amount of capacity. And that's why if you have like a NAS drive, a Synology or something at home, even nowadays, generally they come with, or you would fit them with, old-fashioned HDD drives, the old ones that had spinny things in them, right? But for DJing laptops, go for SSD if you can. You're going to spend a bit more, but it's definitely worth it. So the next thing is the amount of memory. Now this is important. This has gone up quite a lot. So we used to say, 4 or 8 gigabytes of memory is absolutely fine for DJing, doesn't take too much. Now, record box stems, just to give you an example, really won't work well at all unless you've got 16. And that's a big number. But 16 gigabytes is where it's at now. And actually, my advice would be if you can afford it, get 32 as well, because you're just future-proofing yourself for all the stuff that AI will be doing for you in your music in the future and other features. But definitely 16 as a minimum. So that's the first part of the answer. Really, we're looking for a fast processor, the biggest SSD drive you can afford, and as much memory as you can get with a minimum of 16. Now, the second part of this is that the computer physically has to suit the job. So you can get a lot of computers that have got a great spec, especially if you're going to look at Windows, because build quality alters a lot on Windows PCs, that really aren't up for the job of DJing. This isn't going to sit on a desk in an air-conditioned office and just be used for a couple of hours a day. This is going to be used, hopefully, out and about. It's going to be put in the back of a freezing car and locked away on a journey. Then it's going to be put into a really hot nightclub where it's suddenly going to be very humid and sticky. It's going to probably have stuff spilt on it. It's going to be dropped. In other words, your poor laptop is going to have a bit of a hard life. And that means getting something sturdy. Now, we do not get into the Mac Windows debate here. They are both perfectly capable of doing all the jobs. However, that said, there's no real problem with the build quality of Apple computers, but you have to make sure if you're buying a Windows computer, you're spending the extra to get something that's built really well, because otherwise you're going to regret it and it might mechanically fail on you. You still have to look after it, still have it raised up above table height when you're DJing on a stand. So if someone does put a drink down and it gets knocked over, the chances are it won't be on your computer and so on. But look, it's worth getting something that's really well made. And lighted keys, says Don in the live chat, are a really good idea as well. Yes, because any light in the DJ booth when it's dark is going to help you. Totally agree with you there. Thank you for that, Don. And the other thing I would say is a big, bright screen. Now, screen resolution, in other words, can it show 8K with lots of tiny pixels? Honestly, not really that important. It's much more important to have a big screen that's bright, because actually one of the things we recommend DJs do, especially if you find yourself squinting at your screen and you think that the laptop screen is causing you to not be as fluid in your DJing as you should be. Remember, your DJ setup should feel like a musical instrument, right? If you picked up a guitar and the strings were too close together and so you couldn't play them, I mean, I'm making this up, but you imagine as a guitar player, you'd be like, no, the strings need to be further apart. I need to be able to play this thing properly. Otherwise, what's the point? It's the same with your DJ setup, and that includes your laptop. So if the screen's too small or too dim and you can't see what you need to see to get in the flow and perform, well, it's like a musical instrument that's not set up properly. So you're going to need to make sure that the screen is big enough, but the resolution doesn't really count because, and this is a piece of advice, we often advise DJs to knock the resolution down a notch or two. If you go into the display settings on a laptop, there is a best setting for this particular screen setting, normally on a slider, and then you can slide that down a bit and you can make it, pretend the screen's smaller, and what that does is make everything bigger, and suddenly your software will just feel like it's breathing. Obviously, at the expense of not being able to fit as much information on the screen, but there's a trade-off there and you can find the way that it works for you. But if you've got a bigger screen, it's more likely that you won't have to do that, or you won't have to do that as much. So go for a big screen, but also bright. Because if you're DJing in daytime, trust me, a bright screen is going to be a godsend. So phones have got very, very bright screens because the manufacturers, Samsung and Apple and so on, have figured out that That's very important, right? But even with a bright phone screen, I'm sure you know you're walking along in the sunshine, they can be hard to read. And so make sure you've got a bright screen. And the other thing I would say mechanically is enough USB sockets and other sockets indeed that will fulfill how you set your gear up. So if you do know you're going to need to plug in USB accessories and controllers and samplers and whatever, make sure you've got enough sockets. And if you think you're going to want to use video DJing or bring visuals into your sets and push them from your software and from your laptop out to screens, then having an HDMI socket can be useful. If you're going to be using streaming services for music, having an Ethernet port could be good, because if you've got Ethernet available, it's always going to be more reliable than using Wi-Fi. And so all of these things feed into what you should be looking at. Now, obviously, there's always going to be a trade-off between cost and features, but all I would say is try and find the money now and keep it for the next 5 years. It's far better than compromising and finding it just hasn't got what you want, or it's not reliable, or as Don says, you know, the keys aren't lit and that's annoying you, and so on. So Julius, I hope that helps, but the first port of call is definitely the page on the website of the software you're using. The manufacturer always has a minimum specifications page, and it's normally on the download page because they don't want you to download it without checking, right? They don't want someone to have a bad experience with their software. So they normally make it very clear before you download it. So if you can't find the page, just try and download the software and it will probably become really obvious to you. Right, so the next question is from DJ Skinny Puppy. And DJ Skinny Puppy has got quite an interesting dilemma or task that he's trying to undertake. Real name Sean, so thank you for this, Sean. So Sean is retired and Sean wants to get back into DJing. But Sean doesn't need to earn any money out of it. He's retired, he's set up for this stage of his life. So he wants to DJ for charity, and he wants to DJ for the ASPCA, which I'm going to guess is the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, especially with a name like DJ Skinny Puppy. I'm seeing a vibe here. So this is what Sean wants to do. Sean says, I want to give all of the money that I would take, including tips, to the charity, and I will require donations from people I play for, etc. So it's a charity thing. So, well, firstly, I think this is great, Sean, but Sean says, you know, any tips, any advice? Does anyone do this? So it's interesting you should ask this question, Sean, because in a way, I am the same. So I have a full-time job and career as a DJ tutor nowadays. I spent 20 years of my life DJing professionally, but now all of my personal income comes from running a DJ school. And actually, to go out there and DJ for money and to have to put that through the books, and you know, it's not worth it for me as far as the accountants are concerned. My accountants would be like, just do it. Just don't come near us with any money you make from DJing. Now, I won't make money from something that doesn't go through the accounts. So long and short of it, I don't want to DJ for money. I don't DJ very often. If I do, I'll do it for fun. It will be for friends. It will be for a party because I want to do something. It'll be live streams, or, and this is where we're the same, Sean, it will be for charity. So there's charities here in Gibraltar where we are that I'm very interested in and I will always support. And that for me would be literally the motivation for doing it, right? So I wouldn't want money for that. But I'm going to give you a few tips, and I've got some stuff that might surprise you, Sean. So firstly, it's absolutely fine. And indeed, I recommend that you should cover your costs. In other words, DJing for charity doesn't mean losing money. You're buying equipment, you're buying music, you're replacing things. And so, yes, if you want to DJ for charity and you don't want to make a profit, that's fine. But there are costs involved in your DJing, and it's absolutely fine to cover those. So you should be looking at what you're spending on music. And you know, one easy way is, you know, what have I bought new for this gig? How much music have I bought? You know, that's okay, cover that. It will make you take your DJing a little bit more seriously, because there's something about being paid for what you do that changes your mindset, even if ultimately it's to benefit a charity. So I'd consider covering your costs, but just don't make any profit out of it. Now, there's two types of events really that could be on your cards here. DJ Skinny Puppy, aka Sean, and they are events where you're doing it for the charity and events where you're doing it just in any other context, but donating the money to the charity. So for instance, they have charity events here where I live, where if you were the DJ, it would be obvious you were DJing for the charity because it's a charity event, right? But also I could say to a friend who's got a gig in the park or something and he wants to DJ between the bands, yeah, I'll do it for you, but it's going to be for whichever charity I choose, right? So there's two different types of gig there. And so if you're DJing on behalf of the charity and you're going to give the money to them, but it's not something they've arranged, then make sure everyone knows you're doing that. Make sure that there's banners or that there's projections or even posters put up in the toilets. That's always a good place to put posters. However big the venue, everyone's going to see them if you put them in the toilets. So make sure that people know you're doing it for charity. It's important that the word gets out that this is what you do. You want your name to be associated with this thing you do. Promoting yourself is all right as a DJ. Just because you're doing it for charity doesn't mean you can't let people know this is what you do. So make sure people know, I would say, is the next thing. Because once they do know, you can leverage what you're trying to do, which is raise money for your charity, with the audience. You can get the audience to help. You can get on the microphone and say, look, this is all been for free. Please come and put some money in the box or whatever. And as you say, any tips you get, you could have something where you're inviting people to give you tips in order to get the music they want played or whatever. I don't know. It depends on the gig. But the point is, if the audience know, that opens up ways for you to make more money for the charity. And so if the audience doesn't know, you're missing out on all that stuff. So the final thing I want to say here is that I think it's laudable that you want to do this for free and so on. But if you like DJs who want to make a career of this and DJs who want to make money from their DJing, when they say to us, should I ever play for free? We kind of say, no, you shouldn't play for free ever, unless you're playing for a charity, in which case cover your costs and then that's it, right? That's the advice I've just given you. Because playing for free is not a good idea for the culture of DJing, and also it's like flying a plane, right? Apparently pilots will fly planes nowadays, especially national rather than international, and especially over there in the US, for very little money because it's just cool to fly planes. And the pilots' unions are saying, look, this is bad. Yes, it's cool to fly planes, but you want the best. You want safety. You want people who really know what they're doing, and you've got to pay these people properly. And yet people are undercutting all the time. It sounds a bit like the world of DJing, doesn't it? But flying planes is cool. DJing is cool, right? And this is why this happens. But the point is that when it comes to playing for charities, those rules kind of get dropped a little bit because cover your costs. And yes, it's a good way of doing it. But one of the things we tell people who are trying to make money is one of the reasons why playing charity gigs is a good thing. And this doesn't make you a bad person, because these two things don't have to be mutually exclusive, is that you're benefiting the charity, you're putting an event on and their money is going to them, which is great, but you're also publicizing yourself. So it's okay to get the charity to publicize you. If you're doing it for them, get them to do something for you. Say, look, get this out to your lists. I'm doing this on your behalf. The more people who come, the more money we can raise. So get this out, promote it with me, right? That's worth doing. But secondly, the gigs themselves can lead to paid events, because the best way to get DJ gigs, and this is another thing we tell people all the time at Digital DJ Tips, when they say, oh, the same people get all the gigs in my town. My town is sewn up. It's a cartel. It's a conspiracy. They don't want me in. They don't want anyone new. People who have that attitude towards it, by the way, have got a problem. But that's another question answer entirely. But the point is, the truth is, it's no conspiracy. The truth is, the people who get the gigs because they've got them. So yes, it's hard to break in, but once you are in, as long as you're good enough and as long as you leverage being someone who's actually playing in your town, you will get more. And the reason you will is that people can see that you can do it and they have a good time when you do. And so most DJs get most work from word of mouth. That could be people who approach you from the dance floor, punters, customers, and you give them a card or you bump phones and your number's there and come and follow me on Instagram, whatever. Or it could be that the venue owners, and that's quite often the way it happens, the venue owners give you the nod and say, oh, this is good. What's your number? Can I book you again? But either way, charity events quite often lead to paid gigs. And Sean, that's okay. It doesn't mean you're morally wrong to leverage the fact that you've done something for free to get something that's paid, right? So if that happens, you've got a choice to make. And if you want to go for them, that's absolutely fine. So we've got several people who've done this on the chat, and I'm going to read out a couple of the things that you're saying. Oh, Thomas says, that was the best advice ever. Don says, sponsors can also provide advertising to their followers and patrons, and they can also supply you with equipment or consumables. For instance, get them to buy you your gaffer tape for the year or something like that. And Thomas says 1 gig can lead to 100 more. That's great advice, that, Don. Thank you for sharing that. And a couple of people also kind of agreeing with what I said, that cover your costs. Things you do for free, says ATGR, are worthless to others. I've made that mistake before. And so thank you for that. And Darian says, I do all my work in teaching school children, and I work for the church and for food banks as well. So yeah, working for charity is good for the soul. I agree completely. Anyway, I hope that has helped you, and thank you for your comments live, students, on that one. I want to move on to the next question now, which came in from Chris. And Chris has a question. This is a music question. Chris has a question about wanting to learn a new genre. So Chris he plays one kind of music, but he wants to learn another kind of music. Now he wants to kind of learn retro, more Chiba, DJ Shadowy, kind of trip hop style music, if you remember that genre from the 90s and 2000s. But doesn't know that much about it, doesn't own much music. So Chris's question, paraphrasing it, says, I want to join a record pool in order to discover this kind of music. And is that the right way to go? So I need to unpack this, especially for Chris, but also for people who maybe don't know what Chris is asking here, what a record pool is, and so on. So the point with DJing is you should buy your music, or at least you should own your music. And that means that you have the physical file. Can files be physical? It's an actual file. It exists on your hard drive, right? You can make a copy of it and hide it in your wardrobe. So if your laptop breaks, you can pick the copy up, get the hard drive out your wardrobe, plug it in and copy them all back again. It does exist. It is physical, right? As opposed to streaming it. So if you stream your music, you log on to Tidal or Apple Music or whatever, and your DJ software lets you play that music and you can have playlists and so on, but you're relying on the internet, you're relying on paying that subscription, and you're relying on the licensing between the streaming service and the record labels for that music to be available when you plug in any given day or time. So you should own the music you play as a rule. We always say use streaming for discovery and use music you own for actually DJing. That's the first thing. So Chris owns the music he plays in the genres he's always played, but he wants to now discover a new genre. So his question is, should I use record pools to find that? So let's look at what record pools are first. A record pool is a DJ focused service online that lets you pay a subscription in order to get upfront music, new music ahead of time and unlimited. In other words, you pay your subscription once a month and you can get as much of the music that they add to their service as you want. You can download it and then you own it in the same way as if you'd gone and bought it. So a record pool is crucially designed to give DJs new music. So why do these things exist? Well, historically they exist because the record labels, when they had to make physical records, when they had to press vinyl, which obviously has a large upfront cost, used to press a small number, they would give them to the record pools, and the record pools would literally mail them out to DJs. I used to go and collect 5, 10, 20 records a day in brown cardboard parcels from the post office. And your job was to listen to them, decide if you wanted to play them in your sets. If you did, play them in your sets, and then report back to the labels or to the labels via the record pool as to how it went down. You'd have to give them marks out of 10 and all this and give them comments. You used to have to use a fax machine to do it. And that was the way it worked for a long time. Now it's all gone online, and now they've kind of opened up a bit more and you can pay a subscription to be part of it. So as long as you can prove you're a working DJ, and by the way, the bar to being in inverted commas, working DJ is very low. You know, if you've got a Facebook page, hey, you're probably going to get through their vetting. But look, as long as you can prove that you're doing some kind of DJing and you're not just someone sat at home listening to music, then you can join the record pools. They're Zip DJ, BPM Supreme, DJ City, here's a few names, Promo Only, it's a few names of record pools. So these things exist to give you new music, and this is the key here. A lot of people think that they could be a very cost-effective way of building a collection because, hey, I'm a DJ now, I'll join a download pool, and it's like joining a version of Tidal or Spotify or Apple Music, but I can download everything. Unfortunately, it isn't. Now, some pools have some older stuff, and around the edges they push the rules a bit, but generally it's newer music that's on there because it's the new stuff that the record labels still are happy for DJs to be playing a bit ahead of time and so on. And you might get DJ friendly versions as well that are easier to mix because they've got beats at the beginning and end that aren't on the originals and all this kind of thing, right? So Chris's question, so that's the background here. So back to Chris's question. He wants to know whether a good idea is to join a record pool to explore a genre that he doesn't know. And the reason, of course, is he doesn't want to go and buy all this music. He just wants to pay an amount of money to then explore as much as he can and decide if he wants to go in that direction. So I think you probably know the answer to this question already, because based upon what I've just been explaining, it's not going to be the best place to get older music from. And so the best way to do this, I've already mentioned, is to join a streaming service, even one that you can use in your DJ software like Tidal or Apple Music if you use Algorithm's DJ software, as in DJAY, or Amazon if you use some of the Engine DJ gear. They all have different music streaming services that they work with, but join a streaming service and use that. So a mainstream one, a Tidal, an Apple Music, an Amazon, because they're more likely to have the back catalogue of the genres that you're looking for. And then use that to explore the genre, because you can DJ with it in your DJ software at home, and you can explore as if you own the tunes. You can make playlists and all this stuff. And then when it's time to DJ out, if you decide you're going to follow this route and you're going to use this genre for some gigs, then you can go and buy the music that you want, the music you've identified. And so that's definitely the way to go, rather than trying to find a download pool that will let you do it. And also the discovery features are a lot better on streaming services. So that means that you're more likely to uncover the stuff that you want quickly, because they're built to keep you there. And you'll find that the download pools are a little bit more clunky when it comes to that kind of thing, because they're just not they haven't got the money to invest in being sticky, if you like, having recommendations and AI picking tunes, and also people aren't making playlists on there in the genres that you might be interested in. You know, you discover a playlist by someone who loves the same music as you, and then you're off. And you don't really find that in download pools. So for all those reasons, go for a streaming service is my advice to you there, Chris. Let's now move on to a few questions that have been coming in from our students as we have been live. The first one is from Keith, who says, Happy New Year all, and Happy New Year to you too, Keith. I've seen your reviews of the Traktor Z1 or Z1. This is the new controller for Traktor software, which is just the mixer bit. If you look at a DJ controller, it's the bit in the middle with a couple of up faders and a crossfader and a few knobs. I've seen your reviews of this controller. What's the general view on whether this is the way forward? So this way of DJing, where instead of buying a piece of equipment that's got everything in one, you buy the individual pieces of equipment. Of course, it's not new, because back in the day, we bought a mixer and we bought two separate turntables, and then we bought a mixer and we bought two separate CDJs, which became media players. And so this is nothing new, but it is something that is unusual in the DJ software world, where you have a DJ software platform like Rekordbox or Serato or Traktor in this case, running on your laptop. Generally, the thing that you plug in is all in one. It's a cool box that's not very big, that's portable, that's got two turntables or two jog wheels and a mixer in the middle. But it's not the only way. And as Keith is saying, especially Native Instruments, the company that make Traktor software, they've always been quite big on having modular gear, where you can buy kind of thin, long pieces of equipment that contain only the parts you want. So you could buy the mixer part, and you can buy other bits that let you control the decks or that let you control samples and so on. And then you can just buy the parts that work for you. So Keith's question is it the way forward? Do you think buying these units, the Z1 or Z1, which is the mixer, and the X1, which is their deck controller, is a sensible way forward? Well, if you're not sure, then no, it isn't. Because the best way to learn to DJ is to DJ on gear which is quite similar to all the other gear out there. However, a lot of DJs that play electronic genres where they're not really needing to use turntables to manipulate the music because they're not scratching, or they've never done it so they don't miss it, they find that using these smaller controllers is actually quite useful because it means that their footprint in the DJ booth, in other words, the amount of space they need to clear in order to set their gear up, is a lot smaller. Or they might use little pieces of equipment like to trigger samples and so on from their software, and then use the gear that's already in the DJ booth for everything else. So it's a hybrid way of DJing. It's a way of DJing that certainly appeals to people who play electronic music more than, you wouldn't see hip hop DJs and scratch DJs using this gear because the turntables are the point for them. However, I'm not to say that that's not possible. It is possible. So really, unless you're sure this is what you want, then probably not, Keith. But look, go and look at our tutor, Laidback Luke, on YouTube. Laidback Luke has shared lots of videos recently of him and his new setup. And he's using just such a modular controller. He's using a Reloop Mixtor Pro, and he's got his phone perched at the back of it. And his phone is his decks. And he's DJing in the biggest venues and on the biggest stages in the world with just that. And so if you want to see what's possible with modular, go and look at Luke's videos. It might blow your mind. But for most people, no. This is something that you graduate to with a lot of thought, Keith. So unless you're sure, I would say definitely stick to the more conventional way of DJing for sure. So this question came in from Ryan. And Ryan says, I've got a question about reading the crowd. At the last house party I DJ'd at, I came across a unique situation. Usually, of course, people will dance to show they're enjoying. But here, they were all playing party games. And so I was trying to switch up the vibe and the energy, and nothing really changed. People were singing. A few people were getting up to dance. But it was a house party. People were playing games. People were chatting in the kitchen. I'm getting the vibe. People are having a good time. But maybe there's not a proper dance floor. Maybe not everyone's dancing, right, Ryan? I can see, I can almost picture this party. It sounds like fun. I can picture where you are. But Ryan's question goes on and says, look, people stayed for 5.5, 6 hours, and I played for that long as well. So they must have been enjoying the music and having fun, but they weren't dancing. And so my question is, how will you read a crowd when they're not dancing, when they're doing other things? It's a great question, Ryan. And of course, how you do it depends on the situation. If you're in a club, and you're warming up the crowd, so the crowd are just arriving, the body heat of all the human beings in the room haven't warmed the room up yet, so it's still a bit chilly. Everyone's kind of looking around and do I want to be here or not? They've not bought a drink yet. They're still putting their coats away. There's only 50 people in because there's a big queue outside and they're letting them in one by one. In that kind of situation, reading the crowd is very different to what you just described. In that kind of situation, you're watching everyone who comes in, you're looking for people looking at you, you're looking for people smiling, you're looking for people nodding their heads, obviously talking about the music to their friends with a smile on their faces. And then as soon as you get that first person on the dance floor, you are playing to them and them alone until you've got two, and then you're playing to two of them, and then you're playing to three of them. And you're only looking at the people around the edge who aren't dancing when the dance floor is full. Because when the dance floor is full, your job as a DJ in a club is to rotate it because no one can dance all night on the floor without a break. So your job is to look at the people who aren't dancing. How can I get them onto the dance floor, right? And then the changes in style and energy is what makes a great DJ from a good DJ. But it's very different to a house party. At a house party, honestly, you've got the job of almost providing the background music because people aren't there for you. They haven't come because you're there DJing. They've come because it's a Christmas party, they're friends, and they're getting together. And so your job really is to provide great background music. It's like DJing in a lounge or a bar. And so variety is important, but it sounds to me, Ryan, like you did a good job because they were there for 5.5 or 6 hours. And in fact, you say that you're only meant to be playing for 3 or 4. And so I don't think you did anything wrong. I think it's more just a question of understanding what that kind of party is like. I think if you did the same thing again, you wouldn't have any of these issues. You'd recognize the traits of people having fun. But also at this kind of party, you're not up on a suspended DJ booth away from everyone, right? You can get out from behind your decks and go and chat. And you can sit with people and they'll tell you, oh, you're the DJ. I loved that, what you're doing earlier. Have you got any of this? And you'll get the vibe very quickly of the room. One of the best things about DJing, if you can, in my view, is leaving your DJ booth. I often, when my DJ career, the residency I played for longest, which was 12 years, pretty much every Saturday night for 12 years, was a small club that you could pack about 400 people into the main room. And there was a second room upstairs, which is about the same size. So a really small club. And The DJ booth was right on top of the dance floor. It was like right there. And so I could very, very, very easily walk out and just go to the dance floor. In fact, I could go upstairs and see how it was going on and get back in time to play the next record. I could get to the bar and the toilets and so on. But I could easily get out, and I did. I left the booth a lot because you immediately see the night how everyone else is seeing it, right? It's a unique view from the DJ booth, and it's not the view everyone else has. So you immediately see how everyone else is seeing the night. Look, at a house party, you've got a really good opportunity to do that. So do it. You know, it's not really about your mixing. People aren't there for you. They're there to hear great music and have fun. So put good records on and go and walk out, you know, enjoy yourself a bit, but you'll also get in the vibe of the night a little bit more then as well. And you'll relax and you'll realize that tapping feet and smiling, and like you say, a few people singing along, getting up to dance every now and then, that's enough. Great story from one of our students a while back who said that they were booked to play at a party and didn't know who it was for. Classic mobile DJ type thing. It's an association or a club or a society. Weren't really sure what kind of society it was, but they were booked to play at this venue. So they turned up, played music. There's only about 50 people there. The venue could hold about 300. So they're basically around the bar, no one on the dance floor, sat there, shrinking into their shells, thinking, oh no, it's all going wrong. I'm going to retire. I've made some wrong decisions as a DJ. This is not what I'm meant to be doing. I'm awful. No one's dancing. No one's interested. I just want to turn it down and go home. Anyway, this DJ, being a professional, played the whole gig. And at the end, played the final record and was packing away, wishing the ground would swallow them up. And a few people came over from the crowd and said, thank you so much. That was really, really good. We were just saying how great the music was tonight. And the DJ said, oh, I thought I was terrible. I thought you hated me. I thought that I just shouldn't have been here. It was horrible. And you know, it all came out. And the people said to them, look, we're a gardening society. We only get together once a year, and all we want to talk about is our allotments and our gardening and our fertilizers. And we just wanted someone to play some music just in case we wanted to dance, but we knew we wouldn't. You were really good. Thank you. So don't always think that because people aren't acting the way you think they're going to act, they're not having fun. It's part of being a DJ is understanding the variety of crowds that you'll be playing to. But a good question is, are they here for me or are they here for something else? And if it's something else, dancing is always optional, right? And that's where we're going to leave it for another Your Questions podcast. Do join me for the next podcast, which is an inside track edition, when we'll be looking at 3 burning issues in the world of DJing. If you'd like to get your question answered on this podcast, then become a Digital DJ Tips student and you get a chance to ask questions every time we record one. And join us for the live recording. Just head to digitaldjtips.com and become a member of the world's biggest and best DJ school. Until next time, get good, get out there and make the moments.